After working all day at the city library, I stopped by the grocery store to buy food for dinner. When the cashier swiped the card, the machine made that sound that freezes your soul. Declined. Insufficient funds. I tried again. Sure, it was a system error. Nothing. Numbers I couldn't believe appeared on the screen. $320. That was all that was left. I got home trembling, with no bags, no food, not understanding what had happened. And there he was, my son, Mark, 46 years old, sitting on the couch like a king on his throne, legs spread, remote control in his hand. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, was lounging next to him, looking at her new phone, the one I didn't know they had bought. "Mark, what happened to the money in the account?" I asked, my purse still hanging from my shoulder, still trying to breathe normally. He didn't even look at me. He kept watching television as if I were an annoying fly. "Tiffany bought a car and renovated her mother's house with your money. I approved it," he said. Just like that, with that coldness. Like someone commenting that they changed the channel. The world stopped. $85,000. Years of my life getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Years of taking 2 buses to get to the library. Years of saving every penny, dreaming of the day I could have something of my own. A small place where no one told me what to do, where to sit, what to cook. Tiffany looked up and smiled at me. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile of victory. "Mom Eleanor, are you going to make dinner now?" "Mark is hungry," she said, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just stolen my entire life. And Mark nodded. "Yeah. Make those meatballs that you make so well, the ones with your special touch." I just stood there, with 73 years on my shoulders, feeling something inside me break into 1,000 pieces. But something else was being born. Something cold. Something that had been dormant for years. That night, I made the meatballs. I made them just like always, with the recipe my grandmother taught me, the one the whole family loved. Mark ate 3 plates. Tiffany ate 2. And afterward, they went to sleep happy, with full stomachs and clear consciences. But 3 weeks later, they both started wearing long-sleeved shirts. Even when it was hot, even when they were sweating. And neither of them ever asked me to cook meatballs again. Let me tell you how I got here. How a 73-year-old woman who only wanted peace and a little respect ended up preparing the most memorable dinner of her life. I am 73 years old. I have worked my entire life without stopping. I cleaned other people's houses when my husband died, and Mark was only 8 years old. I worked in a textile mill for 15 years, on my feet, with swollen hands and a back that creaked every night. Then I studied at night, my eyes burning with exhaustion, to get the certificate that allowed me to get into the city library. That job at the library was my pride. It didn't pay much, but it was respectable. I had a desk. People said "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor," with respect. I helped children find books for their homework. I organized the files carefully. It was a quiet place, where I could breathe, where no one yelled at me. I never asked for much in life. I just wanted a quiet corner to drink my tea in the mornings, without anyone telling me I was in the way. I dreamed of retiring soon, and maybe, just maybe, renting a small apartment near the park. Something simple, with a big window where the sun could come in. Something of my own. Mark was born when I was 27. He was a beautiful baby, with his father's big eyes and my small nose. His father, my husband David, worked in construction. We earned just enough to pay the rent on a 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. But we were happy. David would hug me at night and tell me that one day we would have our own house, with a yard where Mark could play. When Mark was 8 years old, David died in an accident on the job site. A poorly secured beam. No insurance, no compensation. The company simply closed and the owners disappeared. I was left alone with a child, with debts, with a future that looked like a bottomless pit. But I didn't give up. I got up every morning even when my body ached. I worked at whatever I could. I cleaned offices at night. I washed other people's clothes on the weekends. Also, Mark could have food, school supplies, clean clothes, so he wouldn't feel like he was different from the other kids. And it worked. Mark studied. He was a good student. He graduated from college with honors. He got an excellent job at a tech company. I would cry with pride every time I saw him leave the house in his suit and briefcase. My boy. My reason for living. When he met Tiffany 5 years ago, I thought everything would finally be okay. I thought I would have a daughter-in-law to share cooking secrets with. Someone who would call me for coffee. Someone who would ease Mark's burden a little. How wrong I was. Tiffany came into our lives like a storm disguised as a gentle breeze. At first, she was all smiles and thank you, Mom Eleanor, for the food and what nice decorations the house has. But I saw something in her eyes. Something calculating. Something hungry. They got married 6 months after they met. Mark was in love like I had never seen him. And I, like every foolish mother, kept quiet about the doubts that were eating me up inside. I didn't want to ruin his happiness. I didn't want to be that bitter mother-in-law everyone hates. Tiffany moved into the house 2 months after the wedding. Just until we find our own place, Mark said. I agreed. He was my son. How could I say no? Besides, the house had 3 bedrooms. I slept in the smallest one, the one that used to be the storage room. They could take the master bedroom. It was only fair. At first, everything seemed normal. Tiffany worked at a clothing store at the mall. She left early and came back late. I barely saw her. Mark was still attentive to me. He would ask me how my day had been. He would hug me before he left for work. But slowly, very slowly, things started to change. First, it was the remote control. One day, I came home from work and wanted to watch the evening news, like I always did. Tiffany was watching a reality show. I asked her if we could change it for just half an hour to see the news. She looked at me as if I had asked her to donate a kidney. I'm watching this, Mom Eleanor. Besides, this is the living room for all of us. Whoever gets here first is in charge. Mark didn't say anything. He was on his phone, oblivious to everything. So I went to my room and watched the news on the old television I had in there, with the bent antenna that made the picture shake. Then it was the food. I had always done the grocery shopping. I knew what to buy, where the best deals were, how to stretch the money to last the whole month. But Tiffany decided that she would do the shopping because she had better taste and knew what quality things were. She started buying expensive brands, imported cheeses, wines that cost more than my weekly salary, cuts of meat that I would never have dared to buy. And when I commented that maybe it was too much spending, she looked at me with disdain. It's just that you're used to cheap things, Mom Eleanor. Mark deserves nice things. He works very hard. As if I hadn't worked hard my entire life. As if my wrinkled hands and my creaking knees weren't proof enough of everything I had sacrificed. Mark, my son, the boy I had raised alone, who had seen everything I suffered for him, said nothing. He just ate the expensive cheese and drank the imported wine and thanked me as if I were the maid who had set the table. Then came Brenda, Tiffany's mother. A 60-year-old woman with mahogany-dyed hair and nails always painted a bright coral. She wore perfume so strong you could smell her from the hallway. And she had that voice, that shrill voice that drilled into your ears. The first time she came to the house, she walked in as if she owned the place. She didn't even greet me. She walked right past me as if I were part of the furniture and plopped down on the couch. "Tiffany, honey, what a lovely house you have," she said, looking around with approval. "Your house," as if my name wasn't on the deed, as if I hadn't paid a 30-year mortgage to have that roof over my head. Tiffany smiled. "Thanks, Mommy. We're making some upgrades. We want everything to look more modern." Upgrades? With what money? But I didn't say anything. I swallowed my words just as I had swallowed so many other things in my life. Brenda started coming over more and more often. Twice a week. 3 times. Sometimes she would stay overnight. And every time she came, she brought criticisms wrapped in fake smiles. "Oh, Eleanor, are you still using those curtains? They're so old-fashioned. Tiffany should change them for something more elegant. Eleanor, that stew smells very strong. Tiffany and I don't like food with so much seasoning. You should cook milder. Eleanor, why don't you dye your hair? The gray makes you look so much older. My stylist is excellent, although he's a bit expensive for your budget." And Tiffany would laugh. She would laugh at her mother's comments as if they were harmless jokes. Mark would look at his phone. Always his damn phone. One night, after Brenda left, I exploded. I told Mark that I didn't like how they spoke to me, that I felt disrespected in my own home, that I needed him to defend me, just once. Mark sighed, as if I were a capricious child asking for a toy. Mom, don't be dramatic. Brenda is like that with everyone. Don't take it personally. And Tiffany loves you. She's just trying to make the house look better. You should be grateful that she cares. Grateful. That word stuck in my chest like a rusty knife. But the worst hadn't arrived yet. The worst was when Tiffany quit her job at the store. I'm tired of working for other people, she announced one day during dinner. Mark and I decided that I'm going to stay home. That way I can take better care of everything. Take care of what? I wondered. She didn't clean. I was still mopping the floors, doing the laundry, ironing Mark's shirts. She would get up at 11 o'clock in the morning, paint her nails, watch television, talk on the phone with her friends for hours. And the money started to disappear faster. I had opened a savings account when Mark was 15. Little by little, month after month, I had been putting something away. Sometimes it was $50, sometimes $20. When I couldn't afford to save, I'd at least put in $10. For years I did that, with discipline, with hope. When Mark turned 25 and got his job, I proposed something. Let's open an account together. That way we both save, and when you need something important, it's there. A house, a car, an emergency. He happily agreed. For years it worked well. He put in his part. I put in mine. Until Tiffany arrived. When Tiffany and Mark got married, he insisted that she also have access to the account. We're a family now, Mom. It doesn't make sense to have secrets with money, he told me. And I, as always, agreed. With faith. Because he was my son. Because I thought Tiffany was part of the family now. Because I was a naive fool who believed that love and kindness are always reciprocated. The first few months, Tiffany didn't touch anything. The account continued to grow normally. I deposited my pension and part of my salary from the library. Mark put in a fixed amount each month. Everything seemed fine. But then I started to notice strange things. The account was growing more slowly. When I checked the transactions at the ATM, I saw withdrawals I hadn't made. Small ones at first. $300 here. $500 there. I asked Mark. Oh yeah. Tiffany needed a few things. Clothes for some job interviews. Don't worry, Mom. We'll pay it back. They never paid it back. The withdrawals became more frequent. Larger. $1,000. $2,000. I watched as the money I had worked so hard to save evaporated, but every time I asked, Mark had an excuse. The car needed repairs. We had to pay off some credit card debts. Unexpected expenses had come up. And meanwhile, Tiffany would come home with bags from the most expensive stores at the mall. New shoes every week. Designer purses. Perfumes that cost more than my monthly rent from 20 years ago. One afternoon, I came home from work and found the living room full of new furniture. A huge cream-colored leather couch, a glass coffee table with gold legs, a floor lamp that looked like it was straight out of a design magazine. Do you like it, Mom Eleanor? Tiffany asked, proud, running her hand along the back of the couch. We needed to change that old furniture you had. It was embarrassing. That old furniture I had bought 15 years ago, with the first decent bonus I received at the library. It had cost me months of extra savings. And it was comfortable, sturdy, perfect. How much did all this cost? I asked. Although I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Don't worry about that. Mark and I took care of it. Besides, it's our house. We have a right to make it look good. Our house, my 30 years of mortgage payments, my name on the deed, my house. But now it was our house. Theirs. Mark arrived that night and didn't even blink at the new furniture. He sat on the leather couch, stretched out his arms, and smiled. It's comfortable. Good job, babe. I sat on the edge of the new couch, afraid of getting it dirty, feeling like a guest in my own living room. Brenda's visits became unbearable. She no longer came alone. She brought her friends. Women her age with faces stretched by plastic surgery and shrill laughs. They would sit in my living room, drink my coffee, eat the cookies I bought, and talk about me as if I weren't there. Poor Tiffany. What a heavy burden to have to live with her mother-in-law. One of them, a woman named Sharon, with platinum blonde hair and huge fake pearl earrings, would say, "Yes, but look at this lovely house. At least that makes up for it," another would reply. And Brenda would nod, sipping her coffee with her pinky finger raised, as if she were a queen. My daughter is a saint. Not just anyone puts up with these situations. But well, as long as Eleanor behaves herself and doesn't cause problems, I suppose they can coexist. Behaves herself, as if I were a dog that needed to be trained. Tiffany was right there, sitting next to her mother, and she said nothing. She didn't defend me. She just smiled and nodded and served her more coffee from the coffee maker I had bought, in the cups I had inherited from my mother. Mark was in his room, with the door closed, playing video games. I could hear the gunshots and explosions through the wall. That night, while I was washing the cups they had used, I cried. It wasn't a loud cry, it was silent. The tears fell into the soapy water and disappeared as if they had never existed. That's how I felt, like I was disappearing. But the worst, the absolute worst, came on a Thursday morning. I had a little ritual. Every Thursday, after work, I would stop by the corner bakery and buy myself a glazed donut. Just one. It was my little luxury for the week. It cost me $2. I would eat it slowly, with a cup of tea, sitting by the window in my room, looking out at the street. Those 20 minutes were mine. No one bothered me. No one asked me for anything. It was my moment of peace. That Thursday, when I got home with my donut in its paper bag, I found Tiffany in the kitchen with Brenda. They were laughing, surrounded by bags from an expensive bakery downtown. "Look, Mom Eleanor," Tiffany said, pointing to the table full of elegant pastries. Brenda brought French pastries. "They're super expensive, but delicious. Try one." I looked at my $2 donut in my hand. Suddenly I felt ridiculous, poor, insignificant. "No, thank you. I already have my donut," I said, and went to my room. I heard their laughter through the door. I don't know if they were laughing at me, but it felt like they were. I felt every laugh like a slap. I sat on the edge of my bed with the donut in my hands. I didn't even feel like eating it anymore. I left it on the nightstand and just stared at the wall. That white wall that needed painting. That wall that had watched me every night for years. That wall that was a silent witness to my crumbling life. And then I asked myself, when did I stop being a person and become a piece of furniture? When did my son stop seeing me as his mother and start seeing me as an obstacle? At what point did I lose my value as a human being? I had no answers. I only had exhaustion, a weariness that went down to my bones. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying too much emotional weight for too long. That night, Mark came into my room. It was strange. He hadn't come in for months. "Mom, I need to talk to you," he said, sitting in the only chair in my room, that wooden chair that creaked every time someone moved. My heart leaped. Maybe he had finally noticed how they were treating me. Maybe he was coming to apologize. Maybe everything was going to change. "Tiffany and I are thinking about expanding the house," he said. "We want to do a big remodel. Knock down this wall. Make the living room bigger. Make a bigger room for us. We need you to contribute about $30,000 from the account." The world stopped. $30,000. $30,000 that had cost me years. Years of getting up with an aching back. Years of eating the cheapest food so I could save a little more. Years without buying new clothes. Without going to the movies. Without treating myself to anything. All saved, penny by penny, to have something for when I could no longer work. To have a way out. To have dignity. "Mark, that money is for my retirement," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though it was trembling inside. "It's all I have for when I can't work anymore. I can't just give it to you like that," he sighed. That sigh he used when he thought I was being difficult. That sigh that made me feel like a burden. "Mom, don't be selfish. This house is your house too. If we improve it, you benefit too. Besides, Tiffany and I have been covering a lot of expenses. It's only fair that you chip in more." Selfish? I was selfish? I, who had raised this man alone. I, who had broken my back working so he could have an education. I, who still cooked, cleaned, washed his clothes, paid the electricity, paid the water, paid the gas. I was selfish? Mark, I pay half of all the utilities in this house. I buy food. I clean. I cook. What more do you want me to do? It's not about that, Mom. It's about being a family. Families support each other. Or is it that you don't love us anymore? You don't care about our happiness? There it was. The manipulation disguised as love. The guilt wrapped in gift paper. If I didn't give them the money, it was because I didn't love them. If I protested, it was because I was a bad mother. I stayed quiet. Mark got up from the chair and gave me a pat on the shoulder, like someone comforting a dog. Think about it, Mom. It's what's best for everyone. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house, Tiffany laughing in the next room, Mark talking on the phone with someone about some work project. Life went on for everyone but me. The next morning I told them no, that I couldn't give them that $30,000, that I was sorry, but that was my future, my security, my only safety net. Tiffany didn't speak to me for a week. She walked past me as if I were air. Mark was distant, cold. He no longer greeted me in the mornings. He no longer asked me how my day had been. The atmosphere in the house became so tense it hurt to breathe. Brenda came to visit, and I heard her talking to Tiffany in the living room. That selfish old woman. After everything you two do for her, letting her live here, giving her a roof over her head, and she refuses to help you. How ungrateful. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. My hands trembled as I peeled the potatoes. Ungrateful. I was the ungrateful one. But I held my ground. I didn't give them the money. And for a few weeks, I thought that maybe things would calm down, that they would find another way to do their remodel, that life would return to some kind of normal. How naive I was. One Saturday morning, Tiffany announced that Brenda was coming to stay for a whole week. She's having some dental work done and needs someone to take care of her. You two don't mind, right? It wasn't a question. It was a declaration. Brenda arrived with 3 suitcases. 3. For 1 week. She settled into my room. The couch is just too uncomfortable for her back, Tiffany explained, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. You can sleep on the couch for a few days, Mom Eleanor. It's not a big sacrifice. 73 years old, working since 6 o'clock in the morning, coming home with swollen legs. And I was supposed to sleep on the couch so that Brenda, who didn't even live here, could sleep comfortably in my bed. Mark didn't say anything. He was watching a football game. The volume was so loud I don't even know if he heard the conversation. That week was hell. Brenda behaved like the lady of the house. She would get up at 10 o'clock in the morning and demand that I make her breakfast. Scrambled eggs. Not too cooked. Toast, but not too toasted. Freshly squeezed orange juice. And coffee with milk. But only with skim milk because she was watching her figure. I got up at 5:30 to get to work on time. I got home at 6 o'clock in the evening, dead tired, and had to cook for 4 people. Wash the dishes. Clean the kitchen. And then, when everyone else went to sleep in comfortable beds, I lay down on the couch with a thin sheet, trying to find a position that didn't kill my back. One night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, Brenda came out of my room and woke me up. Eleanor, can you make me some tea? I can't sleep. I looked at her in the darkness, her silhouette against the light from the hallway, and something inside me broke. It wasn't a big, scandalous break. It was silent, like when a dry branch snaps under the snow. I made her the tea, chamomile with honey, just as she liked. I took it to my room, where she was lying in my bed, watching videos on her phone. Thanks, she said, without looking at me, like someone thanking a waiter in a restaurant. I went back to the couch. I lay down. And for the first time in many years, I felt something that wasn't sadness or exhaustion. It was rage. Pure rage, boiling in my chest like water about to evaporate, but I held it in. I hid it deep inside. Because it wasn't time yet. The week ended, and Brenda left. But not before leaving my room a complete disaster. Clothes thrown on the floor. Wet towels on the bed. Makeup spilled on my nightstand. Pill bottles everywhere. Tiffany didn't even apologize. Oh, Mom Eleanor, you know how my mom is. A little messy, but she has a heart of gold. I cleaned everything. As always, like the good Eleanor who cleans, cooks, obeys, and doesn't protest. But something had changed in me. It was as if a door that had been closed for years had finally opened, and on the other side of that door was a different Eleanor. An Eleanor who was fed up, an Eleanor who wasn't going to put up with it anymore. I started to watch them more, Tiffany and the way she moved through the house as if she were a queen, Mark and his indifference, his constant attachment to his phone, his inability to see me as anything more than a kitchen utensil, Brenda and her increasingly frequent visits, her poisonous comments disguised as advice. I studied them like one studies an enemy before a battle, and I discovered things. Tiffany hadn't left her job because she was tired. She had been fired for stealing merchandise from the store. Mark had credit card debts I didn't know existed. Brenda had been evicted from her apartment for not paying rent for 6 months. All this information came to me in strange ways. A stray comment from a neighbor, a letter Tiffany left forgotten on the table, a call from a bank that I answered by mistake. And then I understood. They weren't just using me. They were bleeding me dry, down to the last drop, until there was nothing left of me. And then, when I was no longer useful, they would throw me away like an old rag. I couldn't let that happen. I wasn't going to let that happen. Then that day came. That damned day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. I had worked all day at the library, organizing a huge donation of books that had arrived, boxes and more boxes, up, down, carrying, sorting. My back was screaming in pain, but I kept going. I always kept going. It was what I knew how to do. I left work at 6 o'clock on the dot. My legs hurt. My arms hurt. My soul hurt. But I had to stop by the grocery store. There was no food left in the house, and I knew that if I arrived empty-handed, Tiffany would make some biting comment about my responsibility. I went into the grocery store with my mental list. Bread, milk, eggs, ground beef for the meatballs Mark loved so much, vegetables for soup, rice, the basics. Nothing fancy. Never anything fancy for me. I filled the cart slowly, comparing prices, looking for sales. Every penny counted. It had always counted. When I got to the checkout, the cashier started scanning the items. The sound of the scanner. Beep, beep, beep. A sound I had heard thousands of times in my life. An everyday sound, almost comforting. The total was $83.47. I took out my card for the joint account. That account I had shared with Mark for years. That account where my savings, my pension, my entire life converted into numbers, were held. I swiped the card. And that's when my world collapsed. Declined. The word appeared on the machine's little screen like a death sentence. Declined. Insufficient funds. It must be a system error, I told the cashier, feeling the heat rise to my cheeks. Let me try again. I swiped the card again. Declined. The people behind me in line were starting to get impatient. I could feel their stares, their sighs, their irritation. Ma'am, do you have another form of payment? The cashier asked, with that mix of pity and annoyance that makes you want to disappear. I don't understand. There has to be money. Let me check the balance. The cashier helped me check the balance on the machine. My hands were shaking as I entered my PIN. The number appeared on the screen. $320.15. $320. In an account that 2 weeks ago had $85,400. $85,000 that had taken me 30 years to save. 30 years of sacrifice, of deprivation, of dreaming of a dignified future. Ma'am, I need you to either put the items back or pay. There are people waiting, the cashier said. I nodded. I couldn't speak. If I spoke, I would cry. And I wasn't going to cry there, in front of all those strangers. I left the grocery store empty-handed. I walked to the bus stop like a ghost. I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel anything except a huge emptiness in my chest. On the bus, I took out my phone with trembling hands and checked the account transactions. There it was, black and white, the truth in cold, cruel numbers. October 22nd, withdrawal of $42,000. Memo, transfer to account ending in 7829. October 25th, Withdrawal of $25,000. Memo. Transfer to account ending in 7829. October 28th. Withdrawal of $17,800. Memo. Transfer to account ending in 7829. All in the same week. All to the same account. Tiffany's account. They had taken everything. Absolutely everything. And they had done it while I was working, while I was cleaning, while I was cooking for them. The bus moved through the city, and I looked out the window without seeing anything. The streetlights blurred with the tears I could no longer hold back, but I cried in silence. Always in silence. When I got home, Mark was on the couch. Our new cream-colored leather couch that cost who knows how many thousands of dollars. He was sitting with his legs spread, the remote in one hand, his phone in the other. Tiffany was next to him, filing her nails. Long nails, painted a bright peach color. I stood in the doorway, my purse hanging from my shoulder, my hands empty, my heart broken. "Mark," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, as if it were coming from someone else. "What happened to the money in the account?" He didn't even look at me. He kept watching television, a sports program. Men running after a ball while my life fell apart. Tiffany bought a car and renovated her mother's house with your money. I approved it. Just like that. That simple. That cruel. Like someone commenting on the weather. Like someone saying they ordered pizza for dinner. The world stopped spinning. The air stopped entering my lungs. Time stopped in that terrible, unbearable moment. "What?" I could barely whisper. Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, indifferent. The eyes of a stranger. Tiffany's car was getting really old. She needed a new one. And Brenda's house was falling apart. The roof, the floors, the bathroom needed fixing. They were real needs, Mom. Not whims. "That was my money," I said. "My money. My savings. My future." Tiffany looked up from her nails and smiled at me. That smile I already knew so well. That smile of victory. Technically, it was a joint account, Mom Eleanor. We all had the right to use it. Besides, we support you. We give you a house. We give you food. It was only fair that you chip in a little more. They supported me. They supported me. I, who paid half of all the utilities. I, who bought the food. I, who cleaned this house from top to bottom. I, who still worked at 73 years old while Tiffany painted her nails on the couch. You had no right, I said, and my voice started to rise. You had no right to steal from me. We didn't steal anything, Mark said, and his tone was annoyed, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. We used money from an account that belonged to all of us. Stop the drama, Mom. You're being hysterical. Hysterical. 30 years of savings gone, and I was hysterical for being upset. Mark, that money was for when I can't work anymore, to rent my own place, to have some dignity in my old age. Well, keep working, Tiffany said, returning her focus to her nails. My mother is 62, and she still works. You're not that old. Besides, you can always live here with us. That's what family is for. Live here, in my own house. But now, as an unwanted guest, as an old piece of furniture they didn't have the heart to throw out. Well, so what's for dinner? Mark asked, rubbing his stomach. I'm hungry. Make those meatballs you make so well, Mom. The ones with your special touch. He looked at me, waiting. They both looked at me, waiting. Waiting for me to swallow my rage, to swallow my humiliation, to go to the kitchen like good, obedient Eleanor and make them dinner after they had just stolen my entire life. And something in me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap, it was silent, like when ice breaks under your feet and suddenly you're falling into dark, cold water. But I didn't show it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I just smiled. Of course, I said. I'll make you my special meatballs, the best I've ever made. And I went to the kitchen. I closed the kitchen door behind me. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking with something new, something I had never felt with such clarity. It was rage, yes, but it was more than that. It was determination. It was the absolute certainty that I was no longer going to be the victim of this story. I leaned against the counter and took a deep breath. Once, twice, 3 times, until my hands stopped shaking, until I could think clearly. 73 years. A whole life of working, of sacrificing, of being good, of being patient, of being the perfect mother, the perfect employee, the mother-in-law who doesn't bother anyone. And for what? To end up robbed, humiliated, treated like trash by the very people who were supposed to love me. No more. I opened the refrigerator. I took out the ground beef. I took out the onions, the garlic, the breadcrumbs. I took out all the ingredients I needed to make my famous meatballs, the ones Mark had loved since he was a child, the ones he asked for every time he wanted to be comforted, the ones that carried my love, my time, my dedication. But tonight, they were going to carry something else. I started chopping the onion. The knife hit the wooden cutting board with a steady rhythm. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Every strike was therapeutic. Every strike was a small release of all the fury I had accumulated for years. While I cooked, I thought. My mind worked quickly, calculating, planning. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I wasn't going to poison them. I wasn't a murderer. But I did know Tiffany and Brenda very well. I knew their weaknesses. I knew exactly what bothered them, what caused them problems. Tiffany was allergic to shellfish. Not a deadly allergy, but one that caused her terrible skin rashes. Red blotches that lasted for weeks. Unbearable itching. Swelling in her face. She had mentioned it to me once, years ago, when she was still pretending to be nice to me. And Brenda had a delicate stomach. She couldn't eat anything too spicy without suffering the consequences. She would spend days in the bathroom, in pain, in discomfort. She had also told me, back when she used to visit, and I was still foolish enough to worry about her well-being. I smiled as I mixed the meat. In the back of the pantry, hidden behind spices I never used, I had a jar of dried shrimp powder. I had bought it months ago for a recipe I never got around to making. It was very fine, almost like dust. If you mixed it well with the meat, it was impossible to detect with the naked eye. And in the other cabinet, I had a special hot pepper a colleague from the library had given me. A pepper so hot, she had warned me. Use just a tiny bit, Eleanor. With this, a little goes a long way. I had never used it. Until now. I took the jar of shrimp powder. I glanced at the kitchen door. Closed. I could hear the television in the living room. The canned laughter from some stupid show. Life was continuing out there while I, in here, was taking control of my destiny. I opened the jar. The smell of the sea hit my nose. I emptied a generous spoonful into the meat mixture. Then another. I mixed it well, very well, until it was completely invisible. Then I took the hot pepper. I chopped it into minuscule pieces, so small they were lost among the meat, the onion, the garlic. I added more than any sensible recipe would recommend. As I formed the meatballs with my hands, I felt a strange calm, a peace. As if after years of being lost, I had finally found the way back to myself. I put them in the skillet. The oil sizzled. The smell of home cooking filled the kitchen. That comforting, homey smell you associate with love and family. How ironic. While they cooked, I made the tomato sauce. Extra spicy, of course. I added more of the pepper in there too. And just in case, a few drops of the hot sauce I found in the back of the refrigerator, the one with the label that said, "Caution, extremely hot." The meatballs browned perfectly. They looked beautiful, appetizing, innocent. I made white rice, a simple salad. Everything normal. Everything as always. I set the table. The same plates as always. The same silverware. The same glasses. "Dinner is ready," I announced, opening the kitchen door. Mark and Tiffany came to the table like hyenas to the smell of blood. They sat down. Mark rubbed his hands in anticipation. "Smells delicious, Mom." "I knew you wouldn't disappoint me." "You wouldn't disappoint me." As if his disappointment was the most important thing in the world. As if stealing $85,000 from me wasn't disappointing. As if treating me like trash wasn't disappointing. I served them. 3 large meatballs for each of them. Generous sauce. Rice. Salad. "You're not eating, Mom Eleanor?" Tiffany asked with that fake voice, the one she used when she wanted to seem considerate in front of Mark. I'm not hungry, I said. I ate something at work. Ali. I hadn't eaten anything all day. But I wasn't going to eat those meatballs. Not because I was afraid of the physical consequences, but because I didn't deserve them. Those meatballs were made for a very specific purpose. Mark took the first bite. He closed his eyes. Delicious, as always. No one cooks like you, Mom. Tiffany ate too. At first, she seemed happy. Then she frowned slightly. They're a little spicier than usual. Oh, it's a new recipe I wanted to try, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I thought you'd like something with more flavor. Mark shrugged and kept eating. He devoured all 3 meatballs in minutes. Tiffany was slower, but she also finished her plate. She even had seconds. She took 1 more meatball. I washed the dishes while they went back to the couch. My heart was beating fast, but my face remained serene, calm, controlled. That night, I lay down in my bed in my room that I had finally gotten back after Brenda's invasion, and I waited. I didn't know exactly how long it would take to take effect. Allergies were unpredictable. Spiciness worked differently in each person. But I had faith. Faith in justice. Faith that the universe, finally, was on my side. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard the first scream. It was Tiffany. Mark, wake up. My whole body is itching. I got up silently and moved toward my door. I opened it just a crack, enough to listen. What's wrong? Mark's voice, still sleepy. I'm itching, look at me. Look at my face. Silence. Then, Tiffany, you're all red. You have spots everywhere. I know. It feels like my skin is on fire. What did I eat? What was it that I ate? Mark started to complain too. My stomach. God, my stomach feels weird, like it's burning from the inside. I need to go to the bathroom, Tiffany yelled. I heard her run down the hall. The bathroom door slammed shut. Mark got up too. Tiffany, hurry up. I need the bathroom too. I'm busy. Go to the other bathroom. The sound of running feet. Another door slamming. And then the symphony began. The moans, the groans, the sounds I won't describe, but that we can all imagine. The water running constantly. Tiffany crying. Mark cursing. I got back into my bed and smiled in the darkness. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of justice, of restored balance, of recovered dignity. The next morning, Tiffany didn't come out of her room. When she finally did around noon, her face was a map of red blotches. Her eyes were swollen. The skin on her arms was covered in rashes that looked like burns. What happened to me? She asked me, almost crying. What was in that food? The same as always, I said innocently. Meat, onion, garlic, breadcrumbs, spices. My lifelong recipe. But why? Mark looked terrible too, pale, haggard. Every 2 minutes he had to run to the bathroom. I think the meat was bad, he said, clutching his stomach. You poisoned us with rotten meat. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I laughed in his face. I bought the meat yesterday. It was perfectly fresh. Maybe you just have delicate stomachs. Tiffany was scratching her arms desperately. I need to see a doctor. This isn't normal. Look at me. I look like a monster. Then go, I said. I'm not stopping you. That day they called Brenda to come and take care of them, as if they were small children, unable to fend for themselves. Brenda arrived mid-afternoon, carrying bags from the pharmacy and with her face full of motherly concern. She walked past me without greeting me, as always, and went straight to Tiffany's room. My poor baby girl, what happened to you? I heard her say in that dramatic voice she used for everything. I stayed in the kitchen making tea. For myself, of course. They could die of thirst for all I cared. Tiffany told her, between sobs, about the spots, the itching, the discomfort. Mark also joined the conversation from the bathroom, where he had practically set up permanent residence. It was the food from last night, Tiffany said. Mom Eleanor's meatballs. They had something in them. Something bad. And you ate those meatballs? Brenda asked Tiffany, lowering her voice but not enough for me to miss it. Yes, Mom. All 3 she served me. I even had seconds because they were good. There was a silence. Then Brenda said something I couldn't hear clearly. But from the tone, I knew they were talking about me. Planning something. Maybe thinking I had poisoned them on purpose. Let them think what they want, I thought. Let them prove it. That night, Brenda demanded that I show her the ingredients I had used for the meatballs. I opened the pantry with complete calm. I took the meat from the refrigerator, still in its original packaging, with yesterday's date clearly visible. I showed her the onions, the garlic, the breadcrumbs, the oil. "Do you see anything strange?" I asked her with venomous sweetness. Brenda inspected everything with her eagle eyes. She smelled the meat, she checked the spices. She found nothing out of the ordinary. Because I had already gotten rid of the shrimp powder and the special hot pepper. I had thrown them in the public trash can down the street that very morning, nice and early, before anyone woke up. "Maybe you have a stomach bug," I suggested. "You've been eating a lot of food out lately. Who knows what condition they prepare food in at those expensive restaurants you love so much." Brenda looked at me with pure hatred. She knew. She couldn't prove it, but she knew. And I held her gaze without blinking, letting her see that I was no longer the submissive Eleanor they could trample on. Tiffany didn't leave the house for a week. The blotches on her skin got worse before they got better. They looked like second-degree burns. Her face was so swollen she could barely open her eyes. Every time she looked in the mirror, she cried. Mark couldn't go to work either. His stomach tortured him day and night. He lost weight. He looked gaunt, gray. Every meal was an adventure of pain and running to the bathroom. And I continued my life as normal. I went to work. I came home. I cooked, but only for myself, because neither of them wanted to try my food. They kept their own things in the refrigerator. They ate bread, crackers, packaged things they knew I hadn't touched. Brenda stayed that whole week to take care of them. She slept on the couch because I had locked myself in my room. I wasn't giving up my space anymore. No more. One night, I heard her talking on the phone with someone, probably one of her friends. I'm telling you, that old woman poisoned them. You can't convince me otherwise, but there's no way to prove it. She's too clever. I smiled in the darkness of my room. Clever. After 73 years of being the fool, someone finally called me clever. During that week, I took the opportunity to do things I had postponed for too long. I called the bank. I spoke with a manager. I explained the situation, the unauthorized withdrawals, the theft. But ma'am, the account is joint. Technically, both owners can make withdrawals without the other's consent, the manager explained with a compassionate voice. I know, I said, but I want to close that account and open a new one. In my name only. And I want to transfer everything that's left. I did the paperwork. The $320 that were left were now in a new account. Mine alone. With a new card. With a password only I knew. I also went to see some apartments for rent. Small. Modest. But clean and dignified. I calculated that with my pension and my salary, I could afford one. It wouldn't be a luxurious life, but it would be my life. Mine and no one else's. A woman from the real estate agency showed me a studio on a 3rd floor. It had a big window that overlooked a park. The afternoon light came in and painted everything gold. It's perfect, I said. When do you want to move in? She asked. Soon, I replied. Very soon. I left a deposit. I signed the lease. 1 month's rent in advance. The apartment would be mine starting November 1st. 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to plan my escape. 3 weeks to get my freedom back. When I returned home that afternoon, Tiffany was in the living room with Brenda. The blotches on her face had started to fade a little, but she still looked terrible. She was wearing a long-sleeved shirt despite the heat, to cover the rashes on her arms. Mom, Eleanor, she called out when she saw me come in. Her voice was different, less arrogant, more cautious. I stopped and looked at her. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Could you cook something simple for dinner? Mark and I still don't feel well. Something light. Please, please. I hadn't heard that word from her mouth directed at me in months. No, I said simply. Tiffany blinked, confused. No, I'm cooking for myself. You can cook for yourselves. Or you can order food. Or you can starve. I don't care. Brenda shot up from the couch as if propelled by a spring. How dare you talk to my daughter like that? I looked at her. This woman who had invaded my space, who had slept in my bed, who had treated me like a servant, who had raised a daughter who thought the world owed her everything. Your daughter and my son stole $85,000 from me, I said, my voice clear and strong. They bought a car for her and renovated your house. My house, which I paid for 30 years. They are treating as if it's theirs. They have humiliated me, disdained me, used me, and discarded me. So no, Brenda, I am not going to cook for them anymore. I am not going to clean for them anymore. I am not going to do anything for them anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Tiffany turned pale. Well, paler than she already was with the blotches. Mom Eleanor, I didn't mean to. Yes, you did, I interrupted. You meant to do exactly this. You wanted my money. You wanted my house. You wanted to use me until there was nothing left. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. There's nothing left of the foolish Eleanor I used to be. Mark came out of the bathroom at that moment, still looking sick. What's going on? Why are you yelling? Your mother is insulting us, Brenda said with indignation. Your mother is telling you the truth, I corrected. And if you don't like it, you can leave. You can go live in Brenda's renovated house. You can use Tiffany's new car. You can do whatever you want. But you are no longer going to use my house, my money, or my patience. Mark looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. And he was right. This was not the mother he knew. This was a new woman. A woman who had found her spine after 73 years. Mom, you're being irrational, he said, trying to use that condescending tone that used to work. I understand you're upset about the money, but it was a family decision. We can talk about it. There's nothing to talk about, I said. The decision is made, and if you don't like it, there's the door. I went to my room. I closed the door. I locked it. And for the first time in years, I sat on my bed and breathed. I breathed deeply. I breathed freely. Outside, I could hear their agitated voices, Brenda yelling about my lack of respect, Tiffany crying about her ruined skin, Mark trying to calm them both down. But their voices sounded distant, like a television show in another room, present but irrelevant. I took out my phone and opened the pictures of the apartment I had just rented. That big window, that golden light, that space that would soon be mine. 3 weeks. I just had to hold on for 3 more weeks, and then I would be free. The next 2 weeks were strange, like living in a house where everyone is a ghost, passing each other but never touching. Tiffany and Mark avoided me. I avoided them. Brenda had gone back to her renovated house, but not before shooting me murderous looks and muttering things about ungrateful old women. It took Tiffany's blotches almost 3 full weeks to disappear. 3 weeks of wearing long sleeves even when the heat was unbearable. 3 weeks of not being able to wear her low-cut dresses, her tank tops, all those clothes she loved to wear to show off. 3 weeks of looking in the mirror and crying because her perfect skin was now stained, irritated, ruined. Mark was finally able to go back to work after 2 weeks, but he was still thin, pale, with deep dark circles. His stomach had been left sensitive. He could no longer eat just anything without consequences. Every meal was a game of Russian roulette with abdominal pain. And I watched. I watched without saying anything, without showing satisfaction. But inside, I felt that cold justice, that sense of balance that had been missing for so long. One night, Mark knocked on my bedroom door. It was late, almost 11 o'clock. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked through the door. I considered not opening. I considered telling him to go away, but something in his voice sounded different. Smaller, more human. I opened the door. He was standing there, in his pajamas, with messy hair, looking more like the boy I remembered than the man he had become. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I want to apologize," he said. And for the first time in months, he looked me in the eye, really looked at me. I said nothing. I just waited. I know what we did was wrong. About the money, I should have asked you first. I should have. I should have been a better son. Words. Just words. After everything that had happened, Did Tiffany ask you to come and say this? I asked. No, she doesn't even know I'm here. In fact, she's not speaking to me. She says it's my fault what happened to her skin, that I should have realized something was wrong with the food. Interesting. Paradise wasn't so perfect after all. Mom, I know it sounds pathetic, but I miss you. I miss how things were before, when we still got along. Before you stole all my money? I said without emotion. Before your wife treated me like trash? Before you made me feel invisible in my own house? He hung his head. I know. I ruined everything, and I don't know how to fix it. You can't, I said simply. What you broke can't be fixed. Mark, you broke my trust. You broke my heart. You broke years of sacrifice. How do you fix that? I don't know, he whispered, and for a moment I saw tears in his eyes. Part of me, that part that was still a mother, wanted to hug him, wanted to comfort him, wanted to tell him everything would be okay. But that part was small now, very small. I had buried it under layers of pain and disappointment. Mark, raising you was the best thing I ever did in my life, but letting you use my love as a weapon against me was the worst. I'm not going to make that mistake anymore. What does that mean? He asked, and there was fear in his voice. It means I'm leaving, I said. I already rented an apartment. I'm moving in a week. The shock on his face would have been comical under other circumstances. You're leaving? Where? How are you going to pay? That's not your problem anymore, I replied. I'll find a way. What I know is that I can't live here anymore. Not after everything. But Mom, this is your house. It was my house, I corrected. Now it's just a place where I'm made to feel miserable, and I'm 73 years old. I don't have that much time left in this world. I'm not going to waste what I have left being unhappy. Mark was quiet, processing, probably calculating how this was going to affect his finances. Because without my pension, without my contribution to the expenses, things were going to get tough for him and Tiffany. What if we pay you back the money? He said suddenly. Little by little, we can make a payment plan. We'll pay you back every cent. I laughed. It was a dry, joyless laugh. Mark, you two spent $85,000 in a month. On a car and a renovation. Where are you going to get the money to pay me back? Besides, it's not about the money anymore. It's about the fact that you betrayed me. That you made me feel like nothing. Mom, please, let me fix this. No, I said firmly. I've already made my decision. And this time, no one is going to change my mind. I closed the door. I heard his footsteps slowly walking away down the hall. I heard his bedroom door close. And then, voices. Tiffany asking where he had been. Mark explaining. Tiffany screaming. What do you mean she's leaving? And who's going to pay the electricity? The water? The gas? You know how much the utilities for this house cost. So that was it. They didn't care that I was leaving because they were losing me as a mother. They cared because they were losing me as a source of income. The following days were a silent ballet of mutual avoidance. I started packing my things. I didn't have much. 73 years of life fit into 5 cardboard boxes. Clothes. Some books. Old photos. My mother's jewelry. The teapot David gave me for our 5th anniversary. Tiffany watched me pack from the doorway, her arms crossed. Her blotches had finally disappeared, but her expression was bitter. Are you really going to do this to us? She asked one day. Do what to you? I replied, without stopping my folding. Leave my own house because you two turned it into a living hell? This was always our house, too. Mark is your son. He has a right to live here. He does, I said. That's why I'm the one leaving. You can keep the house. Enjoy it. Fill it with expensive furniture and imported food. Invite Brenda to live here permanently if you want. Do whatever you want. You're selfish, she spat. A selfish old woman who only thinks about herself. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had come into my life like a storm and destroyed everything in her path. Tiffany, you took $85,000 of my dollars without asking. You bought a car for yourself. You renovated your mother's house. You treated me like a servant in my own home. And I'm the selfish one for wanting to have peace in my final years? That money was in a joint account. It was just as much ours as it was yours. Keep telling yourself that, I said. Maybe one day you'll believe it. She left in a rage, slamming doors. And I kept packing. The day before my move, I hired a small moving truck. I didn't need much space. My 5 boxes. A mattress I bought used but in good condition. A few plates and pots I bought at the flea market. That night, I cooked in that kitchen for the last time. But only for myself. I made vegetable soup. Simple. Nutritious. I ate it slowly, savoring every spoonful, looking out the window at the alley I had seen for so many years. Mark didn't come out of his room all day. Neither did Tiffany. It was as if they were in mourning. But not for me. For their income source. For their comfort. For their convenience. The next morning, the truck arrived on time. 2 young men helped me load my things. It didn't take long. Half an hour and everything was inside. As I was about to leave, Mark appeared. His eyes were red. I don't know if he had been crying or just hadn't slept. "Mom, are you really leaving?" he asked, as if he still couldn't believe it. "Yes, Mark, I'm leaving. But what if I need you? What if something happens?" I looked at him. My son. The baby I had held. The boy I had raised alone. The man who had betrayed me. "You have my number," I said. "But Mark, understand this. I am no longer going to come running every time you need me. I am no longer your safety net. I am no longer your source of money. I am no longer your servant. If you call me, it will be as a son, not as someone who needs something from me." I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. "I know," I said. And it was true. I could see the regret in his eyes. But regret doesn't erase the damage. It doesn't turn back time. It doesn't heal the deep wounds. I hugged him. A brief hug. A goodbye. "Take care of yourself, Mark," I said. And I left. The apartment was small. A studio on a 3rd-floor walk-up. My knees protested every step. But when I opened the door and saw that big window, that golden light pouring in, I knew I had made the right decision. The movers left my boxes in the center of the empty space. I tipped them from the little money I had, and they left. And then I was alone. Completely alone. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't heavy. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was freedom. I sat on the floor, because I had no furniture yet, and looked around. The walls were painted white. The floor was old wood, but clean. There was a small kitchenette in one corner. A tiny bathroom, but functional. And that window, that beautiful window overlooking the park. I took my teapot out of one of the boxes. I filled it with water. I put it on to heat on the stove that barely worked, but was mine. I sat on the windowsill with the hot cup between my wrinkled hands and looked outside. There were children playing in the park. An elderly couple was walking hand in hand. A man was selling ice cream from a cart. Life went on, indifferent to my small personal revolution, and it was perfect. The first few days were hard. Sleeping on a mattress on the floor wasn't comfortable at my age. Cooking with 2 pots and 3 plates required creativity. But every discomfort was mine. Every decision was mine. Every moment of silence was mine. I bought second-hand things. A small table, 2 chairs, a worn-out armchair, but comfortable. Ivory-colored curtains that let the light through. Plants for the window. Little by little, the empty space became a home. A real home. Not a house where I was tolerated. A home. Mark called me 3 times that first week. I only answered the first time. "Mom, how are you? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine, Mark. I don't need anything. The house feels empty without you." That made me laugh. Empty. The house felt empty now that there was no one cooking, cleaning, paying for half of everything. "You'll get used to it." That's all I said. The other 2 calls I didn't answer. I sent him a text. "I'm fine. Let me live my life in peace." Tiffany never called. I didn't expect her to. Brenda, surprisingly, did. It was the 4th week after my move. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you," she said, with that voice that tried to sound conciliatory but only sounded fake. "About what, Brenda?" "About my daughter. About Mark. They're having financial problems. The house is expensive. The utilities are expensive. They need help. Let them sell the car, I said without emotion. That car they bought with my $85,000. I'm sure it will give them enough money to pay the bills for a while. That car is Tiffany's only transportation. She can't sell it. Then let Tiffany get a job, I suggested, like the rest of us mortals do. You are a. I hung up before she could finish the sentence. I blocked her number. I didn't need her poison in my new life. At work, something changed, too. My colleagues noticed something different about me. One of them, Fabiola, invited me for coffee after our shift. You look different, Eleanor, she said, studying me with curiosity. Lighter, as if you've shed a great weight. I moved out, I told her. I left the house where I was living with my son. And that makes you happy? I thought about the question. Happy? I wasn't sure I knew that word yet. But there was something. It makes me free, I said finally. Fabiola smiled. That's better than happiness. I started doing things I had never had time to do. I went to the park on Sundays and read on a bench. I joined a book club at the library. I took a painting class at the community center. I was terrible at it, but it didn't matter. It was mine. One afternoon, 2 months after my move, I was at the market buying vegetables when I saw Tiffany. She saw me too. For a moment, I considered turning around and hiding between the stalls. But I wasn't that Eleanor anymore. I didn't run anymore. She approached. She looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was dull. Her nails were unpainted. Mom Eleanor, she said. And her voice sounded small. Tiffany. We stood there, in the middle of the bustling market, surrounded by people haggling over prices and vendors shouting their offers. How have you been? She asked. Good. And you? Things are difficult. Mark had to take out a loan to pay the bills. I got a job at a store again. It's not the same as before, but, she trailed off, waiting for, I don't know, compassion? Pity? For me to offer help? I'm glad you found work, I said neutrally. Mom, Eleanor, I want to apologize for everything. I know I was terrible to you. I know I treated you badly. I have no excuse. I'm just sorry. I looked at this woman who had been the source of so much pain, and I felt nothing. No rage. No satisfaction. Not even pity. Just indifference. Tiffany, I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't change anything. What happened, happened, and I've already moved on. Is there any way to fix it? For you to come back? No, I said firmly. I'm not coming back. I found my peace. I found my space. And I'm not giving that up. She nodded. Tears were running down her cheeks. But they weren't my problem. Not anymore. Take care, Tiffany, I said, and walked away through the market stalls. I didn't look back. 3 months after my move, Mark showed up at my apartment. He hadn't called first. He just knocked on the door one Saturday morning. I opened it. He was standing there, with a bag in his hand, looking unsure. Hi, Mom. Mark, what are you doing here? I wanted to see you, see how you are. I brought donuts. From that bakery you like. I let him in. My small apartment, my humble space. I wondered what he would think, if he would see it as a failure, as a downfall. But when he came in, he just looked around in surprise. It's nice, Mom. Cozy. It's mine, I said simply. Every inch of it is mine. I made coffee. We sat at my small table. We ate the donuts in silence for a few minutes. Tiffany and I are getting a divorce, he said finally. I wasn't surprised. When you take easy money out of the equation, a lot of relationships collapse. I'm sorry, I said, because it was the proper thing to say. Don't be. It was for the best. She wasn't the person I thought she was. Or maybe she was, and I just didn't want to see it. And Brenda moved back in with Tiffany. Apparently, the renovated house wasn't so great after all. Problems with the plumbing, the electrical. They spent my money on appearances, but not on important things. Karma. Beautiful karma. And you? I asked. How are you? Surviving. Learning. Growing up, I hope. He looked at me with honest eyes. Mom, I know I ruined everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know I learned my lesson. The hard way. And what lesson was that? I asked. That money isn't the most important thing. That family isn't measured by what they can give you, but by how they treat you. That you were the best mother I could have had, and I was the worst son. I didn't cry. I had already shed all my tears. But I felt something. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe, eventually, I could get there. Mark, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, but I appreciate you coming. That you were honest. Can I visit you again? He asked, hopefully. Not to ask for anything, just to be here. To rebuild something, even if it's small. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to say no, that it was too late, that the damage was irreparable. But another part, that part that was still a mother, that would always be a mother, wanted to give him a chance. Once a month, I said. You can come once a month, but on one condition. Anything. That you never, ever ask me for money again. That you never again make me feel as if my worth is in what I can give you. If you come because you want to see your mother, not because you need something. I promise, he said, and for the first time in years I believed him. Now, 6 months after my move, my life is simple but beautiful. I get up when I want. I have breakfast at my window, looking at the park. I go to work and come back to my home. My home. On weekends, I paint terrible watercolors, but they make me happy. I read books I always wanted to read but never had time for. I drink my tea in silence, without anyone criticizing the water temperature or the amount of sugar. Mark comes once a month, as promised. We have coffee. We talk about superficial things at first. Slowly, very slowly, we are rebuilding something. I don't know if we'll ever be what we were, probably not. But maybe we can be something new. Something more honest. This morning, as I was making my tea, I looked at myself in the small mirror that hangs by the window. I saw a 73-year-old woman, deep wrinkles, completely gray hair, hands marked by years of work. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw freedom. I sat in my old but comfortable armchair, with my hot cup of tea in my hands, watching as the morning light painted my apartment gold. And I smiled, because for the first time in 73 years, I understood something fundamental. You don't need a palace to be the queen of your own life. You just need the courage to claim your space, to say no, to choose yourself. The meatballs I made that night weren't revenge. They were justice. They were the breaking point I needed to wake up. To remember that I had power, that I had value, that I deserved respect. And now, every morning, when I make my breakfast, when I clean my small apartment, when I pay my rent with my own money, I feel that freedom in every action. I no longer cook for anyone but myself. And when I make meatballs, I make them with love. Self-love. The kind of love I should have given myself decades ago. Because in the end, after a whole life of giving, of sacrificing, of putting others first, I learned the most important lesson. You can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself first. And now, finally, I am taking care of myself. The silence in my apartment isn't heavy. It's not loneliness. It's peace. It's freedom. It's mine. For the first time in 73 years, every cup of tea tastes like victory.